President Underwood, Organizing Committee, Committee of Ministers, my brother John, my sister Trish, everyone, I am so pleased and so honored to be here with you this evening at Mercer University. This is a wonderful treat for me. So we have an interesting title, do we not? Maybe you believe. Religion, religion irritation, living with wrong thinkers and doers, and the stone of hope. This is Holy Sonnet 14 by John Donne. The word fain is going to turn up in this poem. It means happily or gladly. Batter my heart, three-person God, for you as yet knock, breathe, shine, and seek to mend, that I might rise and stand. Overthrow me and bend your force to break, blow, burn, and make me new. I, like a usurped town, to another do labor to admit you, but oh, to no end. Reason, your viceroy in me should defend but is captive and proves weak or untrue, yet dearly I love you and would be loved fain, but am betrothed unto your enemy. Divorce me, untie or break that knot again. Take me to you, imprison me. For I, except you enthrall me, shall never be free, never ever chaste, except you ravish me. This is Deliver Me from Bedford Amaro in Kenya. From the cowardice that dare not face new truths, from the laziness that is contented with half-truths, from the arrogance that thinks it knows all truth, good Lord, deliver me. Religion. Forgive me, please, for beginning with a story that happened to me. I'll make it up to you, I promise. Last summer, I moved from New Orleans, Louisiana, to Berea, Kentucky. I did not intend to do this. By that, I don't mean that a moving van happened to be rolling down my street, that the guys happened to stop and knock on my door, and I said, say, let's just have you put my belongings on the van and see where they turn up. What I mean to say is that I was pretty seriously dug in New Orleans, 14 years, 7 before Katrina and 7 since. I adore New Orleans and had truly planned to stay. But for 2 years, I had the sense that my time at Dillard University and in New Orleans was coming to a close. This was not good news. So I alternately fought this notion and tried to ignore it. In January of last year, a woman from Berea College I had met at a conference sent me an email saying, we've got an interesting job opening up here. Might you like to look at it? I laughed out loud, and I sent her an immediate response, go away, you bother me. Don't you know I'm Dillard's chaplain? But a few weeks later, God and I had a little chat during which God said, don't you know you're my chaplain? Religion might be a little easier to manage if people didn't tell stories like the one I just did. If we could just eliminate the extreme ends of Christianity just for starters, we might be able to fit this religion thing into a right-sized receptacle for easy transportation. Part of the challenge of religion is that we've got the Jesus spoke to me in my kitchen sink people, and we've got the Jesus promised to get me a Jeep Grand Cherokee people, and we've got the mail $20 to this address and you'll be blessed people, and the folk who claimed that they were living happily in New Orleans, and then God moved them to Kentucky. Part of what makes religion less than fascinating sometimes, and I'm going to pick on Christianity because I can, is that there's so much of it. It's so abundant. At any given time, you've got innumerable preachers on TV. We've got churches all over the place. We have worship services and Sunday school and Wednesday night prayer meetings and potluck covered dish dinners galore. We could risk not taking any of that seriously if it were not such a great risk. And if it weren't that for time to time, religion does seem to accomplish something that is hard to explain away. Christianity has had some amazing moments, one of which obviously is the civil rights movement. Another partial one was and is supporting the recovery from Hurricane Katrina. Religious groups and the Red Cross understood the emergency of Katrina more quickly and in some ways more completely than the federal government did. It has continued to do so. Some of the structures that were put in place for Katrina within national denominations and local church-based traveling helping retirees and crackerjack youth groups and so forth are still in place. They're still there because somehow we never did find our way back to normal. As a country, we left normal. Since Katrina, and including in some ways the Florida hurricanes 2 years before Katrina, normal got resorted into a new something we know not what. There was also the massive tsunami that was December 26 in 2004, the winter before Katrina. There have been several events, the earthquake in Haiti, Joplin, Missouri, Superstorm Sandy. I understand you all suffered some flooding here as well. I was sorry to hear that. That didn't even begin to speak to the shootings. Part of the reason that President Barack Obama is pushing a legislative response to the issue of repeated mass shootings must surely be because he has attended and spoken at 4 mass memorials in 4 years of being president. How could he sleep at night? How could he call himself a leader if he didn't try to do something about this? So we have religion. We'll talk about Christianity for a bit, but not solely. We have Christianity, which once seemed to be mainly about fixed point activities, come to Jesus meetings, serious musical throwdowns, and my mega's bigger than your mega. And in some ways, Christianity in the United States is still about those things. But at the same time, with Katrina and other events, some of the church went on the move, and it's still moving. Church folks have learned how expensive it can be to help other folks, but they're still helping. Church folks have learned how long it can take to make even modest progress behind a disaster, but they're putting in the time. Some of the major denominations may not last out this century, but as Church Hill might put it, whatever happens, it can well be said that this is their finest hour. But that's only or mainly the exterior experience. We haven't really talked about the interior experience. Marianne Williamson, who is Jewish, writes and speaks in the realm of the spiritual what if. One of Marianne's statements, and some of you may have heard me quote her before, is that the world is hurt or healed by every thought we think. The world is hurt or healed by every thought we think. Now, I don't know too many people who are prepared to take responsibility for that kind of personal, constant, cosmic impact. This is a serious what if. And some of us, I think, are called to take this very seriously. What if Marianne is right, and you streaming a movie, and you driving down the street, and me complaining for the umpteenth time that I don't like to wash dishes? What if those thoughts and all thoughts are weight on the scale, opportunities gained or blown? And what if what is unseen in this world is that big and that serious and tied to us to such a great degree as that? From Chief Seattle of the Dwarmish tribe, it's been edited for gender inclusiveness. This we know, all things are connected. Like the blood which unites one family, all things are connected. Whatever befalls the earth, befalls the sons and daughters of the earth. Humanity did not weave the web of life. We are merely strands in it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. And please hear this. Remember thy Lord within thyself, humbly and with awe. Below thy breath, at morn and evening, and in the nighttime, also hymn his praise at the setting of the stars. That's from the Quran. Religion irritation. Just after I submitted the title for this talk, I was in the parking lot of the Berea, Kentucky post office, and I was feeling a little apologetic for including the term religion irritation in the title. I decided maybe I was overstating things a bit. Then I happened to notice a car in the lot. On the back window was the ichthys, you know, the fish that's the symbol of Christianity. And the little fish was in a red circle with a red line crossing him out. And underneath it said, freedom from religion. At least for those folks, I wasn't overstating things. What's up with the folks who don't want a religious sensibility in this society? What's up with the folks who want to have their religion but would prefer not to have to hear about yours or mine? Part of what is happening with religion these days is a growing realization of religion privilege and Christianity privilege. Dr. Dunaway sent me the papers of 3 of his students, excellent papers, so I could catch a glimpse into their current thinking, at least what they wanted to reveal to their professor at this time. 2 of the papers, Audrey's and Laurel's, were about white privilege. I'm going to borrow some of Laurel's language for a moment in talking about religion irritation. One of the sources of religion irritation, I'm fairly certain, is religion privilege. Laurel informs us that white privilege implies that white society and culture are, and I'll add, and should be the norm. Religion privilege implies that being religious, especially Christian, is and should be the norm. There's a great prevalence of churches, TV preachers, football players down on one knee giving thanks after the touchdown, closed offices and businesses on December 25th, and presidents ending speeches with God bless you and God bless the United States of America. This works for some of us, but it doesn't work for all of us. We have a bulletin board with the names and photographs of the student chaplains at Berea College. There's a student chaplain for each residence hall, and then we have some that are left over for the community. Loretta, who is in charge of the community chaplains, and I spent a lot of time putting that board together. That's one of the best looking boards on campus. But that didn't stop somebody from taking a black Sharpie and writing on the yellow paper, "Where's the atheist chaplain?" When I first saw that, I asked out loud, what, are they kidding? Uh-oh, religious privilege. Here I go, Reverend 20+ years in campus ministry, asking out loud why anyone would see a need for an atheist chaplain. Isn't that a contradiction in terms? Well, as it turns out, no, it's not. Some people at a time of personal crisis would prefer not to have someone come to them who's quoting out of the Bible, offering the hope of resurrection, or asking to join them in prayer. They also don't want the reverence of Islam, the traditions of Judaism, the connectedness of Native American spirituality, the rationality of Buddhism, the appropriateness of Hinduism, or the ritualism of voodoo, which is, by the way, a real religion, about which folk can get a little protective and a little testy. You would too if people made your religion or whatever you believe into a punchline. I am beginning to understand this. I'm just at the front of this. I haven't given up on interesting people in becoming Christian. I haven't given up on that. But I'm pretty sure I won't be successful in this by first disrespecting them. People who consider religion a happy hiding place for those who don't want to ask themselves what they think and prefer to blame their decisions on Jesus get religion irritation. People who can't get their neighbor or their child's friends' parents or their busy in-laws to back off in the matter of recommending a church get religion irritation. People who would rather sneeze and let that be the end of it, no, God bless you, thank you very much, get religion irritation. And people who tire of sorting out which religious faction is killing which other religious faction, who's picketing what and why, what good a candlelight vigil is going to do, why chemotherapy wasn't chosen in addition to prayer, why church folk need to comment on events in bedrooms other than their own, and why anyone would want to buy a faith tract at their front door from a stranger on a Saturday morning, they get religion irritation too. And that's nothing to say of Christian privilege as well. Ironically, Christianity, this religion of rebellion, this answer to the oppressed, the distressed, the disfranchised, the disinherited, and the downhearted, has been recreated in the 21st century into bodies of believers that can be pretty pushy about having things our way. One of the things I appreciated about being involved with churches in post-Katrina New Orleans was that just about everybody had had their dials reset. Everything that had to be rebuilt or redone took or is taking forever, and it cost the bomb, far longer than any of us had ever imagined. So what we had was going to have to do for the indeterminate future. The church I attended was a post-K hybrid. First United Methodist had been fiercely, proudly white. Grace United Methodist had been bouncy, boldly black. The United Church lost 44 buildings in Katrina. So First and Grace were asked and agreed to come together and become First Grace. They're still working on the building. Every once in a while, a gracious group of folks turns up from Cincinnati and pays them another visit and helps them put something else back together. But in the meantime, they find each other so fascinating that their environment fails to entertain them. First Grace is gentle. There's less religious irritation in their area of town. It's a different kind of religious privilege. They consider it a privilege just to be in church together. There is nevertheless a challenge in regard to Christian privilege. You noticed it, I'm sure, in the first inauguration of Barack Obama, when my brother, who can remain nameless, took the invocation into the Lord's Prayer. I love Christianity and doubly love hearing it out loud. But when it enters into a profoundly interfaith, non-worship, international moment as Christian privilege, it troubles me. But wasn't I just saying it is just possible and probable that something important is going on with religion that we need to pay attention to? Yes, I did say that. So let's go on. Living with wrong believers and thinkers. In preparation for this opportunity, my brother, John Dunaway, was kind enough to mail me 2 books that are widely read on campus and in the city. One of the 2 books is Macon Black and White. Yes? Macon Black and White? Amen. As you all already know, Macon Black and White does a better than average job of painting the picture of horrors, lies, false starts, hopeful beginnings, political meanness, newspaper fight baiting, unkept promises, ignored need, denied citizenship, courageous alliances, timely compassion, and seeds of truth experienced in Macon over its many years. In reading Macon Black and White, I was struck by the 1999 election of the city's first black mayor, C. Jack Ellis, and the difficulties that ensued. The mayor was challenged for reasons that in ordinary circumstances might have remained private, but he also struggled to do his work in the midst of history remembered and history still being made even as he was in office. The beginning of Ellis's term is striking. A media person not identified asked him, "What will you do to allay the fears of the white community?" And I was reminded of a comment made by Archbishop Desmond Tutu in July of 1985, when South Africa was in a state of emergency for the first time in 25 years, so declared by Prime Minister Botha. Tutu says this: "We have an incredible land with wonderful people. White South Africans are not demons. They're ordinary people, probably scared." The thought I had to put on the table right now, then, is that of fear. The Bible says, "For God does not give us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind." Nevertheless, fear does seem to play a serious and recurrent role in the lives of human beings. 52 times in the Bible, I've counted them, by the way, 52 times we are told, "Fear not, don't be afraid." Apparently, this is a message that we need to continue to hear. The next thing that happens with Mayor Ellis is that Atlanta Braves player John Rocker unfortunately chooses to get too frank and talking with a Sports Illustrated reporter, touching off a national brouhaha. The squabble boils down to whether Rocker is racist, but there are other questions. Is he xenophobic? Oxford American Dictionary, having or showing an intense or irrational dislike or fear of people from other countries. Is he unappreciative of hospitality? He was talking about his experience as a guest in New York. Is he inadequately schooled in how to talk to a reporter? A reporter's not your friend. Is he inexperienced? He was 25 years old at the time. And let's just drop this in. Is he scared? Perhaps inevitably and possibly appropriately, one of the editors of the Macon Telegraph enters into the conversation. Ron Woodgeard, how's it pronounced? Woodgeard, all right, comments on Rocker's private school background, speculating that Rocker might have gained a greater appreciation of persons different from himself if he had attended a public school rather than a private school. He says, "I knew they were teaching little racists out there." However, I thought, the students may be learning racism but that doesn't necessarily mean that the school is the one that's teaching it to them. One of our societal challenges is that these days we've got a whole lot of entities teaching a whole lot of things, a lot of them on the basis of no information. There's more. White flight, parental opposition to their children's choice of friends, police chiefs, public relations, and racially polarized voting. But let's go back to racism for just a moment, shall we? Part of what happened with the John Rocker debacle was a squabble over whether or not Rocker was racist. Increasingly, I am wondering whether that is the question we need to be asking. Determining racist or not racist is not really helping our efforts at conversation. It's a question that generates a whole lot of heat, but not much light. Plus, it's almost like asking, is he a sinner or not? For those of you wondering, by the way, the Bible assures us that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. I'm not quite prepared to say that everyone in this country and a bunch of other countries are racist, but I think that may be close to true. Racism is built into this country. In some ways, racism built this country. Racism also built colonialism. And when we're counting those who perpetuated colonialism and those who experienced colonialism and those who are still living under the shadow, the echo of colonialism, that's a whole lot of folks. Racism, technically, provides that I believe that whites or Asians or whomever possess characteristics or abilities that distinguish them as inferior or superior to other races or to another race. While I may not be prepared to go that far, I will admit to believing that there are some behaviors that can seem to be race-specific. Whites can be found saying, well, you know how the black folk do. Sometimes it's just a comment, often it's not very nice, but it doesn't quite boil down to racist or no. By the same token, blacks will say, well, you know how the white folks are. Something not very flattering often follows. One of the differences, however, I don't know if you caught it, is that I didn't say blacks can be found saying, because we've been trained from the cradle not to be found saying it. We're better at not getting caught. So there is race-specific language going on all around. There's race-specific language, conspiracy theories, and painful old wounds that keep getting reopened going on within and between the races. My concern is that we are more invested sometimes in talking about each other than we are talking to each other. We all have a racial sense about us. People who tell me that they don't notice race, I don't believe them. It's like telling me that you didn't notice what gender a person was. The better questions are a bigger ask. What is your experience of race? What do you think shaped it? Can you think of any reason why you might want to know more about people of other races? What would you like them to know about you and to know about your race? The best questions may be the ones that are least likely to be asked. When it comes to race, what are you afraid of? What do you stand to lose? And what might you hope to gain? Going back to John Dunaway's students, Samuel wrote a racial autobiography. What an interesting, intelligent idea. He spoke about the ways he was warned against whites as a child and the very real fears he had of them as a result. But he also spoke of his mother's wish and prayer that he not have those fears. Samuel writes that his mother's prayers became his prayers, and he asked God to help him forgive those who treated him badly, no matter how hard it was. That's where change began. The question, you see, was not whether Samuel was racist, and not whether those with whom Samuel was dealing were racist. The question was, what was his experience of race? Did he have any good reasons to try to change his assumptions about people based on their race? Loving his mother was a good reason to try to change. Practicing forgiveness was an excellent way. The Stone of Hope. A Hindu prayer. O thou shining one, thou knowest all our ways. We utter praise of thee. Thou art woman, thou art man. Thou art youth, thou art maiden. Thou art the dark blue bee. Thou art the green parrot with red eyes. Thou art the thundercloud, the seasons, the seas. Thou art our father. Thou art our mother. Thou art our friend. Stars by Langston Hughes. O sweep of stars over Harlem streets, O little breath of oblivion that is night, a city building, to a mother's song, a city dreaming, to a lullaby. Reach up your hand, dark boy, and take a star out of the little breath of oblivion that is night. Take just one star. And finally, Outwitted by Edwin Markham. I've changed the pronouns to make them plural and to change so they won't be gender specific. They drew a circle that shut us out. Heretics, rebels, things to flout. But love and we had the wit to win. We drew a circle that took them in. This time I'd like to explain why I chose these excerpts. I chose the Hindu prayer to remind us that the world of religion is larger than we sometimes recognize. I chose the Langston Hughes, The Stars poem, because what is most at risk in this country right now may very well be young African-American males whose rate of death by violence, whose incarceration and experience of societal neglect and indifference has reached epic proportions. Yes, we can get away with letting this continue, virtually writing off a portion of our population. But the cost of doing so, I am convinced, would be higher than we can possibly imagine. When it comes to race, that's the thing I'm most afraid of. That we're going to give up on a generation of black boys, cheat them of the support of their society that they so richly deserve, and become less human ourselves in the process. Finally, I chose the Outwitted because it shows a flash of humor, and humor is absolutely invaluable, and because it reminds us how much good can be bought with forgiveness. Beloved community is a descriptive term for the state of relations that can be achieved between people through the means of redemption and reconciliation. Redeem, buy back. Reconcile, restore friendly relations. Now, there's some challenges here, and I know you noticed them. First, this is an undeniably religious approach, and not everybody's going to be on board for that. Second, it's difficult to speak of restoring friendly relations when some relations were never friendly in the first place. My brother John informs me that a bill calling for nonpartisan elections of local officials in the newly consolidated Macon-Bibb County government is a point of contention. And the school board's at an impasse to divide an elected chair. And part of the community is grieving, angry, and frightened by the shooting of an unarmed man, a black man, in December. Exactly how do you redeem? Well, we touched on a lot of it already. I think that we buy back our relationships by talking about what has happened, what is happening, and how we think and feel about it. We need to hear each other. I didn't get to read all of Macon Black and White, but what I experienced, I found healing. Macon is not my history, but there's something absolutely healthy about having the story of a people, any people, told from more than one point of view. It is sad to hear it, but it is appropriate to hear it. There's something about saying that you notice something, that you're not going to ignore it, that you're not going to say that it has nothing to do with you, that you're going to notice it, and you're going to talk about it. John did that for me when he wrote me with the email describing the events of the day. I felt each piece of information. I was particularly touched when he told me the story of the man killed in December. The whole nation was grieving in December, as you recall, but that didn't save that man's family from the particular pain of losing him. Having John say it happened, that he noticed, that it matters, that's redemption. Redemption begins with the stop, look, and listen. Sometimes that's all we can do. I can't change the Trail of Tears, but that doesn't mean that I don't need to know about it and understand that everything changed because of it. I can't change the Holocaust, but I can visit the museum next time I'm in DC, study the exhibits, not turn away, and care. The world is hurt or healed by every thought we think. To move from redemption to reconciliation, we need forgiveness. There's just no other way. We need to set some things down in order to pick some other things up. Religious people, believers, need to be involved in this work. Believers who understand religious irritation can also involve non-religious people, need to be involved in this work. Believers who understand religious irritation can involve non-religious people and have the courage enough to help other people be brave, need to be involved in this work. Maybe you believe, then you should be or continue to be as you are involved in this work. As I close, something else has happened with Katrina. Some of us, many of us, caught a glimpse of beloved community. We saw it. A lot of those folks, John is one and so am I, have never been the same again, and we don't want to be. For the possibility of beloved community, or as much as we can make, or as much as we can find, we will never, ever give up. On August 28th of this year, King's I Have a Dream speech will reach its 50-year anniversary. Obviously, the title for this final section of my remarks comes from that speech. King said, "With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope." Now, there's something important. I need you to see this, if you would, please. As King describes it, that which makes us hopeful will be made out of the same material, will be derived from that which brought us to despair. Do you see what I'm saying? It comes out of the same material. We will remake it into beloved community. We need to take this journey, our stories, the things that divide us, not turn from them, not be afraid of them, instead reshape them into that which allows us to go on together, redeemed and reconciled. Beloved community, that's our stone of hope. This is an excerpt from Pauli Murray's poem, Dark Testament. I've also altered the ending to provide for gender inclusiveness. Then let the dream linger on. Let it be the test of nations. Let it be the quest of all our days, the fevered pounding of our blood, the measure of our souls, that none shall rest in any land, and none return to dreamless sleep, no heart be quieted, no tongue be stilled, until any person may stand in any place and thrust their shoulders to the sky, friend and family, to every other one of us. Thank you very much. I guess you get to ask me questions.
You came close to saying that we all are a little racist.
I did, didn't I?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Could you talk about that for a second?
Actually, one of the things I thought about when I was working on that is I'm good friends with Jeremiah Wright. And I watched that whole business with Wright. You remember it very well. But what struck me about it in the process of that is I've heard a lot of Jeremiah's sermons. He's my all-time favorite preacher. And he does at times seem to me to be racist. And I never called him on it. I've never said, Jeremiah, what's up with that? Am I misinterpreting you? What's going on here? Because what I've had has been different than what he's had. As I did my ministry, I spent as much time in the white church as the black, back and forth. And once you prayed with people and worked with their children and stood at their parents' graves and so forth and so on, that changes you, and you can't just throw off those comments without checking yourself. You know, I'm not saying that folks are never wrong, But I'm saying you have to be awfully careful, because if you cross the line, then you're into a whole different country. I worry about myself. I've done things at times, and I'm like, where on earth did that come from? When I was practicing law, a woman came in one day. She red-haired, and she had on a lot of green and stuff, and one of the other attorneys said, oh, you look positively Irish today. And I said, well, why would you say that to her? What struck me is I was assuming that was an insult. I'd heard Irish people insulted so much all my life, I assumed that he was insulting her. He was complimenting her. But you see what I mean? It's just built in. It's the whole thing, are Hispanics going to vote for Obama? Well, Hispanics and black folks don't like each other. Well, Hispanics and black folks don't know each other. You know, it's that whole kind of casual rolling that we can do that just rolls us into a whole nother country. I don't think any of us are quite shed of it. Now, you know, and I know that every once in a while you talk to somebody and you're like, oh my Lord. Yeah, I talked to a student, we have a student, I won't say the name obviously, who is from South Africa, who managed to raise such a hubbub in a class, they sent him straight to me. And when he was explaining this to me, I was like, oh my Lord. Because like it was a visit from another country, they moved here for a reason. Do I need to go into details? And I was like, oh no, this is a whole other animal right here. You know what I mean? But within this country, though, I think we just do it a lot. I think we do it a lot. And yeah, I think each of us has, not everybody, there's somebody you can find, I'm sure, who's better behaved than I am, but I think we do it a lot. Yes?
I'm curious about the transition from being an attorney in D.C. and going into seminary. Can you tell us how that happened?
Well, I went into law because I considered it a helping profession, and I think I found the best of it with the legislative work. I did have some marvelous experiences in the course of that, but I found that I didn't like how contentious it is, how adversarial, and I wasn't looking forward to my life, is what I figured out. I could do it, and it sure didn't make my dad proud, but I wasn't looking forward to my life, so I prayed a dangerous prayer and said, if you show me what to do with my life, I promise I'll go do it. Hadn't expected that answer. Yeah, so, but the good news of it is I did, you know, kept my day job, went to seminary, and from the first night, I was like, oh yeah, I loved it. I loved it. I never imagined I was in this room with all these guys, and they're like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, beats me. But I loved it. I loved it. So, yeah. Yes?
In lieu of the president going against the grain or natural norms of, like you say, religious privilege and religious irritation, when he made that, when he said that, opened up the possibility of same-sex marriage.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you talk about religious irritation, and how we are, like you say, raised in religious norms and moral standards and stuff like that. I was first taken aback by that thought, and then a scripture came to my mind. I give man freedom of choice. It is your choice to live your life before me. And if we're going to be in a country that is supposed to be founded on freedom of choice, I was dealing with that issue, and it took me a while to kind of understand why, as a president, the head of our country made that move. But then after really thinking about it, and just like you're saying, religious privilege and religious irritation, it kind of like gave me more clarity about why he might have made that decision and go against a whole lot of grain and upset a whole lot of, like you say,
including the complete grain of the black church, which says, oh no, we're not doing that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But look at the journey. You know, how long it took you, how much soul searching you had to go in the Word, come back out, go in the Word, come back, you know, all that kind of, to me, it's this whole reality of God's not foolish. God knows that we've got all this variety of folk in this country with all these differences of opinion, and race and background experience. God knows this. This is not a clumsy thing that's being done. There must be a reason for it. So the question for me kind of is, can we accept the fact that we've got all this difference of opinion and then see what to do next? At this point, we seem to say, well, I'm going to yell until you change your mind and think like me. And it's a waste of time. But are we sure that's what we want? Are we sure that's what we need? You know, one of the best illustrations of that to me is, you know, you go to seminary and they start showing you things, you're just like, oh, law, I didn't need to know that. My first night, they're pointing out that there are 2 different creation stories in the Bible. Honey, I'd read along happily all my life. I'd never noticed it. But it's very clear there's a different name for God in the first story and the second story. There's the first day, second day, third day, and then there's Adam and Eve, 2 different stories. And you can even see the stitch where they come together, and they can tell you which part of the Jewish believers brought this story and which part brought that and all that kind of thing. But what struck me about it is, which story would you want to give up? You know, because if you give up Adam and Eve, then you give up that deliciousness, as I say, the first, you know, moment of marital counseling, when God comes down and says, what's going on down here? And Adam says, the woman that you gave me, you know what I mean? That moment, I'm like, oh, it's a classic moment. But that just, the explanation of so many things, that struggle that we have with evil, all of that is in there, and it's powerful. But in the first one, we get, you know, and male and female created he them, which is that wonderful, and God said it was very good, that wonderful moment of creation with humanity where God is just grinning. You know, if there's a capacity to grin in God, God's grinning. Which story would you want to give up? So it's like, do we really need to settle everything with this or that? Can we live? Can we do the hard work of living, you know, as you say, your president, who you must have thought about writing a letter, my brother, you disappointed me on that latest bit of business, and then you kind of struggled with it and said, okay, I think I can see where he's going with this. I don't agree with him, perhaps, but I can see where he's going with this. I'm always struck when we get into a squabble about something that happens and the other versions of the story come onto the table, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. And then there's always something that I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Something that just seemed mean was, you know, I didn't know that. You know, so there's always that. There was a hand. Yeah.
Would you be willing to risk some perspective regarding the current Supreme Court challenge to the voting rights agenda and doing away with some of those protections that have been put in place for absentee?
I looked at that, but very briefly, but there was some phrasing that bothered me. Goodness. I wish I could remember the phrase, but the phrase struck me as I was like, I wouldn't have gone there. They're caught between a rock and a hard place. I'm afraid they're going to choose badly. I understand the point, but I understand the struggle. And I'm not sure if they're going to be able to put a fine enough point on it to get it right. You know what I mean? It's like threading the needle. You can't be too far to the one side or the other, and I'm worried about, are they going to be able to do something that doesn't take down more than need to be taken down or more than they intended to take down, although they're pretty intentional people. So I'm troubled by it. So much has been accomplished. You know, I spent a lot of my life living in the South. I never would have done that if it hadn't been for the civil rights movement. There's no way I would have moved south to get drinks at colored-only drinking fountains and all that other commotion and so forth and so on. But there's so much still being done, and we're not done. I'm sorry, I wish I could remember the phrase, but I looked at that and I thought, I wish it was that simple.
There's very real local implications for us as we're consolidating governments and redrawing district lines and so forth.
I'm gonna get to you. One of the things that happens, I found, is as the cities have gotten a little blacker and you start having black mayors and city managers and chiefs of police, the assumption seems to be that we've solved the problem. Well, the chief of police is black, so therefore there couldn't have been anything that happened that was inappropriate. I wish that were true. It's not. You know, it's a lot more complicated than that. So, my brother, you've been very patient.
I have a question from West Africa, and I know, like many African countries, always go through a civil war. And one of the reasons why is because of and talking to one another. And actually, because I think the politician here goes out to separate the ethnic group, and so that they can win power in it. Because if they separate them, they create like a, like an issue between them, that bring war. And how do you be a person that creates like a building community where people get to know one another and realize what the government are trying to do? Because every day, you see war going on in Mali, like other countries. So I don't know how can I start something like that where you can come together and communicate about issues.
I'm sorry? Samuel, how nice to meet you. Actually, I'm gonna go to something that President Underwood was talking about over our meal. He was talking about some of the work that the students are doing internationally that's very innovative. It's just very clever. What I find with your generation is you all are immensely adept at finding a piece of a problem and carving off that piece and working that piece. So rather than being overwhelmed with the size and the scope of the thing, because it is really overwhelming what you described, the trick is there's a spot in that situation that's for you. And we were just talking a moment ago about dangerous prayers. That's your dangerous prayer, Samuel. What's my spot? And just, we've got a graduate from Berea who's doing a girls' school. And she's just got this little school going, and it's going great guns. It's not that many kids, and, we're trying to help out a little bit, but that was her spot. She just, she's not trying to, run the world. She's just trying to do her spot. Find her spot and do it. You got friends that'll help you. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that perhaps we need to, you suggested that we buy back our relationships by talking about what has happened, what is happening, I think you said, and what we're going to do about it.
How do we think and feel about it?
How do we get folks together in a forum where we can do that and some kind of way get around our emotions and have the right people in there that make an impact? Because oftentimes we end up kind of preaching to the choir or sharing with the choir members. So how do we do that? And we talk to folks that might need to hear it the most, and might need to have that kind of change. We get together, we have groups, and it's kind of like the choir.
I think it's a beloved community kind of project. The group that runs this, that does this, you got some folks in the room who could get some folks in and so forth would be helpful for it. I think you should, again, carve out a piece of it and just sit down and do it. What strikes me about the book is you've at least got the beginnings of some of the story. You know what I mean? A lot of places don't have what Macon Scott. Now, I'm not saying the book is perfect. I don't know well enough to say and so forth, but at least you've got something as a starting point from let's take a piece of this history, what's it going to be, get some folks together. And since it's different, it's innovative, and it's not like an ongoing thing, you might be able to attract some folks. Just walk them through it. This is what we're trying to do. This is how it works. Can you at least try it with us? And you get some churches together, do you some good prayer sessions. You know what I'm talking about? Some serious ones. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, do that and go forth. I don't think it's impossible. If I did, we'd be done, and we're not done. So it's not impossible. So.
As a person who is relocated back here to Maryland, which I consider Macon my home, on last night I showed a film, and my nephew said to me, he said, why did you pick that particular film to show? Because it's going to be controversial. And the film, this is our 15th year with our Ethnic Awareness Program, and our 15th year showing film exposure fees. And I selected the film, the bio of Barack Obama. I didn't choose that to show because President Barack Obama is the President of the United States. But I wanted to show that film because, for the first thing, so many people don't know about the inner makings of the man himself. The film I thought was very educational. It made you understand why he gravitates towards poor people because of his upbringing in Indonesia. It makes you aware of the identity crisis that he went through with a white mother and an African father. And my thing is, I've been doing these films for 15 years. I've been back from Los Angeles now, for about 18 years. And it is such a struggle to get anything done in Lincoln. And it's not, I don't care about politics. I don't care about being politically correct. But I really want this community to come together. I'm a black woman, but I don't even care that I'm black. What I care about is that this community is made up of a diverse group of people. And when people say that black people are angry, we're angry because we come up with fabulous ideas and then we have 3 events. A few black people may show up because I'm black, but I have no white people hardly. The Hispanic community has been supportive in recent years. And I'm like, this is 15 years. What is it going to take for people to open their eyes and see that I don't have any other motives for doing what I do? I don't get paid a dime by anybody to do it. I spend my own money, and I want to know from someone in this room, what is the matter with our community when we do not come together on good events, when people put it out there, and maybe it's not enough exposure. I'm not sure what it is. But I do. I want this beloved, if we are a beloved community, and if each of us are serious about this being a beloved community, why can't we come together and support each other's events? And I want to know if you've got any kind of insight, and I'm not academically inclined because I don't have a college degree, but I really do have a good spirit. God gave me something to do, and he gave me my corner of the world to work in, which for the time being is Macon, Georgia. I may end up going back to LA, but I'm here now. I grew up here, and I want Macon, Georgia to be a better place. I guess that's not a question, it's a statement.
Yeah, we'll take it as a question. We'll take it as a question.
It didn't sound like a question to me. Did you want to answer? Yes. Okay. I have a couple thoughts, but I have a feeling there might be some nice answers on the ground in here for you. First of all, what's wrong with a controversial film? Is that a problem?
I don't think there's anything wrong with a controversial film, but my nephew felt like, who's going to show up? If they haven't supported you in 15 years, and then you show this film. But like I said, they're children.
Oh, I see. Yeah. He's trying to protect you a little bit?
I guess my nephew was trying to protect me, let me know that these are not the right kinds of films. And actually, Dr. Dunaway is
in his opinion.
Films, and we've had wonderful films that we've shown right here on this campus. As a matter of fact, Dr. Dunaway and Mercer has been very gracious in allowing us to have space here. But I do want this community to get serious about the work. Because let me tell you, when God comes to judge us, it's like, what did you do? And were you real? And are you sincere? And it's not about just your religious belief. It's about being good and decent people. What do we plan to do?
Education is a hard sell. In fact, it's said that education is the only commodity for which the consumer wants less for their money. So that's your first challenge. But what I would suggest also is don't take the scattershot thing of let me just throw that out there and see who comes. You need to identify some folks and invite them in, walk them in if you need to. It doesn't have to be a big group. But you see what I'm saying? When you say anybody come, that excuses people, well, that doesn't mean me. You know, find you a little starting group. Your nephew's got it on his mind. So start with a couple of his friends. You know what I mean? See what I'm saying? That wouldn't hurt anything. But as I say, you got friends on the ground in here.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
First of all, awesome.
Thank you.
And just to her question, Marcus Garvey said in 1915 that there are some people, I'm paraphrasing, there are some people that don't want the Negro patient to get well because it will cost them their jobs or their leadership positions. So they have a vested interest of keeping things the status quo. And so sometimes you have the intention to invite other people to your event. But my question is, which you stated earlier, which is very important to me, is that the plight of the African American man, no one discusses it. No one talks about it. It just gets thrown out there, and there's an alarming rate of African American men, black on black crime, in every city I've ever been to: Philadelphia, New York, Miami, Los Angeles, South Central, and now here in Macon. We have an alarming rate of young black boys killing young black boys. Dropout rate is incredible. The unemployment rate is incredible. Every index you can think of, the African American male is on the lowest of the total pole in those areas, and we don't discuss those things. What do you suggest that the beloved community can do to turn some of those numbers around?
Are any of the churches in the city doing anything with boys?
Some of us are fighting hard.
I would start there. Get some more folks involved. I think they need to see some more faces, perhaps, and be very targeted. Again, as I was saying to the sister there, sometimes we're just too general. We make it easy for people to think that's not about me, doesn't have anything to do with me. Sometimes you have to kind of take them by the sleeve and invite them in. We had a focus group last night, actually, on Berea's campus. We're doing some work with our African-American men and our Appalachian young men, white, from distressed Appalachian County, the poorest counties in the country, basically. And what some of the black guys were saying to us last night was that you should be firmer with them. They were fussing at us because we'd given them mentors and not made them meet with their mentors. And I was thinking, now this is ironic, because I'm calling myself being, you know, whatever. They're grown, they'll figure it out if they don't want to do it. But they're saying, no, you should have made us meet. And I think with young men, it's often that way. It needs to be men to do it, that you can't just offer them things. Somehow, you know, a man has to get in there and say, no, we're going to do this. I'm going to walk you over to Jamar, and you're going to talk with Jamar. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. They appreciate it. They're wired a little differently than we assume. We're thinking, oh, look at this wonderful freedom they have. It's nothing. It's not worth anything to them. So sometimes you have to kind of whittle it down a little bit and, you know, load on some stuff that they need. But just start with somebody, get somebody, and get moving. It's a much, much larger problem. I don't know. I know some private schools doing good work, some public schools doing good work, but it's all kind of scattered, you know what I mean? It's not. And when I sit at commencement and I look at those guys, I'm like, oh, thank God. This is like what's left. After all of them have a friend that got killed, all of them have a cousin who's dead, all of them have, you know, I'm like, this is too much.
On almost every college campus, the rate of females to males African American is like 4 to 5 to 1.
Yes, yeah. Whoops, are we done or are we not done? One more?
Neil over here has a program. If you want something specific you can do, you can be a mentor.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And we need mentors badly to help these folks, these young folks grow up and be accomplished and not be thrown away, not be ignored, and have that attentiveness that she's talking about, have attention paid to them. That's where it starts. Dr. Robert Franklin, when he came and spoke last fall, talked about an approach he had, the 5 wells, is that it? 5 specific strategies for training young men in his particular situation, since he was the Morehouse president, to be contributing, accomplished citizens. And it's things like the mentors program, that's a specific thing you can do in your little corner to help build it.
And I wanted to say to Betty's letter, I've been in the ministry for over 13 years. Tony's been here that long. We're in the trenches every day. We never have enough volunteers. We never have enough mentors. We never have enough people coming to the well and say, drink from this water. But we're still there in here every day. And we appreciate the fact that 15 years we haven't given up.
Thank you.
I have a suggestion. I'm going to put you on the spot, John. Next year, what if the event includes a talent fair? which is that the attendees who have things that they're doing would do a little display or a handout or a card or something where they would say, you know, this is what I'm doing. And the people who are interested in getting involved could then sign up, match their skills, you see what I'm saying? And you know, grab some folks. Just a thought.
That's an action.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, Deb.
Thank you, John.